This is CBN NewsWatch.
It is Monday, March 15, 2021. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Ephraim Graham. Ahead today, the growing number of migrants overwhelming the southern border. Democrats still not calling it a crisis, but Republicans blaming President Joe Biden. Israel heading to its fourth election in less than 2 years next week. The big question, will Benjamin Netanyahu remain the prime minister, or will someone else be taking his place? China cracking down hard on both Christians and Uyghur Muslims. We're going to hear just what the Chinese government has been doing. And Christian artist Zach Williams up for a Grammy Award for his song, There Was Jesus, a duet with Dolly Parton. We'll let you know if he won and why the song is so special to him. All those stories and more are ahead in today's edition of CBN Newswatch. I want to begin this half hour with the exploding number of migrants on the southern border. Democrats and the White House still refusing to call it a crisis. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says the flood of migrants at the southern border is a humanitarian challenge. The surge of migrants, including children, is overwhelming resources. So much so, President Joe Biden dispatched the Federal Emergency Management Agency to help to care for them. What are congressional Republicans doing about it? Aldea Hurd takes a look.
Drone video shows asylum seekers waiting to enter the United States at a makeshift processing center in Texas. Unaccompanied minors are supposed to be transferred to the Department of Health and Human Services, but the surge at the border has exceeded shelter capacity. More than 4,200 children are in Border Patrol custody. Another 9,000 are in shelters. Officials are so overwhelmed that the Biden administration has ordered FEMA, which usually only helps with natural disasters, to help care for the growing number of minors.
The children held right now in the Custom and Border Protection facilities, they don't belong there. That is not a place for holding children. That is a place for adult men.
The surge of children and teens at the border comes after the Biden administration reversed some of the policies of the Trump administration. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi calls it a humanitarian crisis, but blames President Trump for it.
This is a humanitarian challenge to all of us. What the administration has inherited is a broken system at the border, and they are working to correct that in the children's interest.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott says the Biden administration's open border policies are not only creating more illegal immigration to the U.S., but have enriched Mexican drug cartels that profit from smuggling migrants across the border.
The Border Patrol themselves, and really everybody here in Texas, has known that this is coming. They're finally stepping up and providing the resources they need, but it's a day late, and it's really far short.
Republican leaders are heading to the border today to see the crisis firsthand.
We'll be traveling to the border myself with the 12 other members to see firsthand, to come back with solutions, to make sure our border is secure, but to make sure we can end this crisis that Biden has created.
Meanwhile, House Democrats will put forward 2 bills this week to give legal status for millions of so-called dreamers, undocumented immigrants who enter the country as children. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
President Joe Biden is not joining the growing list of Democrats calling for New York Governor Andrew Cuomo to resign amid the growing number of allegations of sexual harassment.
Mr. President, do you think Governor Andrew Cuomo should resign? I think the investigation is underway and we should see what it brings us.
New York Attorney General Letitia James is leading the investigation into the allegations. The New York Post reported many staffers in the Cuomo administration are no longer even showing up for work as the scandals have grown. For the fourth time in less than 2 years, Israelis are getting ready to head to the polls yet again in their elections a week from tomorrow. The big question, will Benjamin Netanyahu remain the prime minister? Israel has 39 political parties, and that makes forming a government coalition extremely difficult. As Chris Mitchell now reports from Jerusalem, this election could have a profound impact on Israel and the entire Middle East.
2 major forces currently define Israel's political landscape. One is the left versus the right. The other is those parties against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and those for him. Given that situation, some political observers say Israel may face another election result like the last 3.
The dynamics in many ways are still the same. Benjamin Netanyahu is pretty much the favorite to be prime minister again. He's got plenty of challengers. Very few of them like him, and the electorate is deeply divided.
At the moment, Netanyahu and his allies may hold a slim advantage.
It looks like Benjamin Netanyahu and his preferred coalition partners are hovering right around the 61 magic number out of 120 Knesset members, which is what he needs in order to form a majority coalition. But the math is very tenuous.
Math is the key to Israel's elections, and the goal is to get those 61 seats in the Israeli parliament to gain a majority and form a coalition. Given the electoral landscape, Naftali Bennett, a former senior member of Netanyahu's cabinet and now head of the right-wing Yamina party, may become a kingmaker.
He is not committed to sitting with Netanyahu. However, unlike the other parties, he has not ruled out sitting with Netanyahu.
Some even think Bennett could become prime minister himself. He told CBN News he's up to the challenge.
Well, I'm running to become prime minister of the state of Israel. It's a huge responsibility. The country is 72 years old. We continue to be threatened by some of the worst countries in the world. Let's cut taxes, cut bureaucracy, speed up the economy in a Reagan-esque way.
Yet the majority of Israelis still prefer Netanyahu. Two issues dominate the minds of Israelis as they go to the polls: restarting the economy and the threat of Iran. The impact of a new U.S. administration is another major factor.
If the United States embarks on a back to the future policy of going back 5 or 6 years to putting more pressure on Israel and easing the breakup on Iran, I think that that's a voting issue that Israelis really have to be concerned about.
What Israelis decide will make a huge difference, not only for Israel, but for the region.
Stability for Israel is key to stability in the Middle East. And if Israel continues to be in chaos and Washington continues to be in chaos, there are going to be a lot of powers around the world tempted to exert their influence and make their mark in the Middle East. And that's probably dangerous for all of us. So it's a good thing to be praying for stability in both capitals.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Back here at home, California's Department of Education is set to vote on a proposed ethnic studies curriculum that would include a chant to the Aztec god of human sacrifice. One writer has claimed white Christians committed theocide against America's native tribes, killing their gods and replacing them with Christianity. In response, the new California woke curriculum recommends the chant to the Aztec gods. City Journal reports the curriculum recommends teachers lead students in a series of songs, chants, and affirmations. And the students would appeal to Aztec gods, including their god of human sacrifice and the god of war, who also inspired hundreds of thousands of human sacrifices. You can read more about the details of this proposed curriculum at cbnnews.com. Coming up, a church in Canada being taken to court for holding worship services with more people than allowed by COVID regulations, and the pastor in jail. We're going to bring you details on this story when we come back. Stay with us.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug of war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline Friday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
I spent many years here.
Now available.
And I've returned with a message.
I am Patrick. Get your DVD with 4K streaming access for a gift of any dollar amount. Also included is your special access to the St. Patrick's Day premiere of the I Am Patrick theatrical release with exclusive bonus content on the CBN Family app. Call 1-800-700-7000 or visit iampatrick.com today.
The Royal Canadian Mounted Police have announced charges against Grace Life Church in Edmonton, Alberta for violating COVID-19 restrictions put in place by the Alberta Health Services Department. The Edmonton Journal reports the agency ordered the church to restrict occupancy of its sanctuary to 15% or less than the building's operational capacity. The Mounted Police say the church has continued to hold services without limiting its occupancy, and the pastor is paying a price for the church's actions. With us now for more is Dan Andros of faithwire.com. So Dan, what's happened to the pastor?
Yeah, well, this has been quite the saga, Ephraim, and Pastor James Coates has been behind bars since February 14th after his church was found, quote, guilty of an offense by police and the health department. And Coates was eventually served with a summons on March 4th to appear in court. Police say the offense was holding church services that exceeded that 15% capacity number that you mentioned there. And on February 21st and February 28th, officials were attending these services and monitoring them for public safety and investigating the situation, and then ended up serving the pastor with the arrest there after the Valentine's service, and continue to fine the church now as well, adding additional charges since they continue to hold services. Back in December, Coates and Grace Life were ordered to follow those restrictions for the first time, and then police filed this application, and the health service filed this application that allowed them to have the power to jail James Coates and enforce these orders. And he is now scheduled to appear in court between May 3rd and May 5th.
What's happened to his wife and family?
Yeah, well, we spoke actually to his wife, Erin, the pastor's wife, and she said that her husband was initially quarantined for 2 weeks and had only 2 15-minute blocks outside of his jail cell. She said that he initially shared a cell with another man, but then due to the high-profile nature of the case, he was moved and spent, quote, the majority of 2 weeks alone, according to his wife, Erin. And he was moved to general population last Thursday. And she has been able to talk to him through video calls, but she said now he gets about 3 hours out in 1 hour chunks, and he's able to be with the inmates during this time. She says she still can't visit him because of COVID restrictions.
Any response or reaction from the church?
Yeah, the church has stood firm here. They said that they're gravely concerned that COVID-19 is being used to fundamentally alter society and strip us of individual liberties. They added that in their view, that love for our neighbor demands that we exercise our civil liberties. So they have been doubling down on this message that this is a very important issue. And this is certainly one that we here in America are watching closely.
We will continue to follow it indeed. What can we look forward to this evening on FaithWire?
Yeah, we're going to be talking about when politics bleeds into religion. Both sides are not immune to this. We're going to be breaking down those details tonight.
All right, Dan, thank you so much. I want to remind you at home that you can watch FaithWire this evening at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. And, of course, you can find that on the CBN News Channel. Still ahead, the major crackdown in China against Christians and genocide against Muslims. We're going to hear just what the Chinese government has been doing and why right after this.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
Administering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to cbnnewschannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
International pressure is mounting against China's communist government. Beijing received global criticism for its mishandling of the COVID-19 crisis. Now it is accused of launching a major crackdown against Christians and committing genocide against ethnic Muslims. Gary Lane brings us this alarming report.
February 1st, 2021. Public security police storm onto the property of a government-sanctioned church in China's Wenzhou city. Their mission? Toppling a cross from the roof of a church building for a second time. They'd removed the cross 7 years earlier, but church members replaced it. Bob Fu is with China Aid, a group that helps China's persecuted Christians.
That city alone, we have documented over 1,600 churches with their crosses were being burnt, destroyed, and destructed. And many pastors, were even detained, imprisoned.
China's Christians say it's the worst persecution against them since Chairman Mao Zedong.
To use Ambassador Sam Brownback's word, it's a war against the faith. I think it's a war against the independent faith.
And it's no longer limited to certain regions of China. VOM's Todd Nettleton says this massive wave of Christian persecution is widespread, and it's coming from the national government.
What we say in 2021 is that everywhere in China, there is intense persecution of Christians. There is intense efforts to control the church, to bring the church under Communist Party control.
The crackdown is affecting every Christian in China, says Nettleton. Protestants, Catholics, government-registered churches, and unregistered house churches. And the Chinese Communist Party has a new excuse for targeting Christians.
Now, under this pretext of COVID-19 coronavirus, the Chinese Communist Party has intensified its persecution by banning all the church activities, even those services or worship or prayer meetings in believers' own homes with their own family members.
July 22nd, 2020. A loud knock on the door at the home of a woman in China's Xiamen city. She tells the police outside they cannot enter her home without a permit. Moments later, they destroy the lock and enter anyway, breaking up what the government says is an illegal meeting. Fu says it's all part of President Xi Jinping's campaign of sinicization, which means Christians are only considered to be good citizens if they adhere to communist ideology.
Ironically, Xi Jinping's portrait was even put on the church pulpit along with Chairman Mao. And the first line item of worship, by the government-sanctioned church before COVID-19 was to sing the Communist Party's national anthem.
And examples go beyond churches. In Fuzhou City, a Catholic family was forced out of their government-subsidized housing after they refused to remove religious icons from their home. And China's Religious Affairs Bureau has banned religious funeral ceremonies and preaching in funeral places. Meanwhile, Christians aren't the only ones suffering. Ethnic Uyghurs from East Turkestan, a region the communist government calls Xinjiang province, are under attack.
China is home to one of the worst human rights crises of our time. It is truly the stain of the century.
One day before he left his post as U.S. Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo officially announced that China is committing genocide against the Uyghurs and Turkic people. New Secretary of State Antony Blinken supports the genocide designation. For years, the Chinese government has forced Uyghur women to undergo abortions and forced sterilizations. Twitter recently locked the account of the Chinese embassy in Washington for tweeting that Uyghur women had been emancipated from being, quote, baby-making machines. The U.S. Defense Department says as many as 3 million Uyghurs are being forcibly detained in re-education and forced labor camps. The president of East Turkestan's government in exile told me on the Global Lane that China is using the camps as a place to brainwash the Uyghurs and harvest their organs for profit. And he says detainees are being used as slave labor.
Millions are still, working in slave labor factories, producing, products for companies like Apple, Nike, Costco, and dozens of others.
And Uyghurs are reportedly being used to manufacture solar panels for export to the U.S. and elsewhere. The Chinese government calls it a poverty reduction effort. The U.S. State Department is alerting corporate CEOs and others about China's use of Uyghur slave labor so they won't become involved. Meanwhile, despite the suffering, Bob Fu is expressing optimism about the country's spiritual future. He says when the Communist Party seized government control in 1947, only about 1 million people in China claimed to be Christian. But today, after 70 years of unrelenting persecution, their numbers have grown to as many as 130 million.
So I think at the end of the day, maybe we should call President Xi Jinping as God's, faithful servant to revive his church.
Gary Lane, CBN News.
And coming up, we're going to switch gears to a lighter note here in the United States. Christian artist Zach Williams up for his 5th Grammy nomination last night for a Christian song he performed with Dolly Parton. We're going to tell you how it ended up when we come back. Stay with us.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Welcome to Studio 5 Uncut. This is our opportunity to share extended conversations with some of the great guests we've had on Studio 5.
You can't go anywhere on the planet and not see the impact of gospel music on popular culture.
Now you're a comedian and a Christian. Why is that such a baffle?
Being an artist who is Christian and an artist who's in hip-hop culture, I'm trying to find my own sound.
Studio 5 Uncut. Next.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
Your news channel. Your shows. The stories you care about. Anytime you want. Anywhere you want. Download the CBN News app today. From Washington, D.C., uncompromising stories, interviews, and analysis from veteran journalists David Brody.
It's a 50-50 deadlock pretty much in the Senate.
Jenna Browder.
Meanwhile, doctors believe the newly discovered California variant is behind a massive wave of new cases.
Ben Kennedy.
He is sworn in as the 46th president.
Bringing you the political news that matters.
We're people who are committed to protecting the most weakest and the most vulnerable.
Watch Faith Nation, weeknights at 6.
Zach Williams told CBN Studio 5 he was surprised to be nominated for a Grammy this year for Best Contemporary Christian Music Performance for the song. The song is There Was Jesus. It was a duet with Dolly Parton. And last night at the 63rd annual Grammy ceremony, Williams said he and his fellow artists found out they did indeed win.
Without God, obviously, none of this is possible. This is Jonathan here, and I think I can speak for myself and Casey. We are so grateful for this opportunity. We want to thank Dolly Parton for being a champion from day one in this song. Thank our families. Thank the Academy. Hey, we love you guys. Thanks so much.
Williams told Studio 5 why the song is so personal for him.
This is a special song for me. I mean, this is very much my story. If I think back to the last 20 years that it took me to get to where I'm at in my life. And even if I go back further than that, back to my childhood, and I think about, all these moments that I missed in my life, now that I can look back and see that God was in the middle of every one of them, working out the details.
Now, the song also marked a special moment for Dolly Parton. It was her 50th Grammy nomination. You can see my full interview with Zach Williams at cbnnews.com. And, of course, on Studio 5. You can find both on the CBN News app. Time now for your Monday motivation. Here's a familiar thought you've heard before, I'm sure, and probably even said it. Prayer changes things. I like to offer a slight edit to that mantra. Prayer moves God, and God changes the situation, or he changes you. But either way, the change is for your good. So if it is not good, guess what? God's not done. With that word, I encourage you to make this a marvelous Monday. That is a wrap for this edition of CBN Newswatch. Thank you so much for watching. I want to remind you, you can always find more of our news programs on the CBN News Channel. You can find them there at any time. You can also find them online at cbnnews.com. We'd love to know what you think about any of the stories you've seen here today. You can email us, newswatch@cbn.com. That's the address right there at the bottom of the screen. You can also reach out and touch us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We certainly would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for beginning your week with us. We'll see you right back here, same time tomorrow. Goodbye, everybody, and God bless.